What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pennell here. We're breaking down week 13 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll be going position by position, breaking it all down for cash games and tournaments. We'll also build a lineup as we go through this, more so for a single entry tournament build. And then at the end, I'll run my optimizer to see which players are populating the most as of right now. So if you enjoy, do me a favor and leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. And honestly, a really good slate this week. Usually it feels like when we have these Thanksgiving slates, and now we have the Black Friday game, we'll be missing a lot of pieces from the main slate, so it's kind of a watered down slate to work with. But honestly, I don't think that's the case this weekend. Lots of good spots to take advantage of, and if you want to go up a quarterback in the middle or down low, I think there is plenty of options here. Now, if we are talking cash games specifically, I think there's one guy we should probably key in on, and I would say that's Justin Herbert. He's just in a fantastic spot here versus this Falcons defense. The Chargers offense, they've been doing well in recent weeks. I feel like we've had Justin Herbert on showdown slates the previous two, or maybe previous three. I don't know. I'm trying to remember correctly, but either way, I don't mind them here. It's a 1.5 point spread. They're on the road in the Dome in Atlanta, so there's no weather to be worried about. I know Herbert hasn't exactly been amazing for fantasy purposes, but in recent weeks, he's actually been all right. And this is a good spot versus Atlanta. They're allowing the 6th most points per game versus quarterbacks this year, and it's very easy and very cheap to stack this team up. And really, this game in general is pretty cheap. So I'm going to be taking advantage of that. I'd say Justin Herbert's probably the best gas game quarterback on both sites this weekend. You can make a case for maybe Anthony Richardson because of that rushing floor. I played him last week in a single entry. I played him naked. I could have paired it with Michael Pittman or something, but I just chose not to. Ended up doing well with it. Richardson didn't go off or anything. He didn't even get into the end zone, but he still got me around 15, 16 fantasy points. It's because he's running the ball. I always have the chance for the rushing touchdown. Anything just through the air, it's going to be a bit of an addition. Looks like Josh Downs is going to be very questionable to play in this game, but it's a really good spot versus New England, so I don't have too many concerns at that price point. I would say maybe the floor is a little bit higher for Anthony Richardson, but Justin Herbert in recent weeks, kind of shaking off that injury he's had, he's been running the ball a little bit too, so that does bump up the floor. But those are probably the two favorite cash game quarterbacks currently. But let's talk some of the stacks for tournaments, because I think there's several guys in really good spots that we can take advantage of. And if you guys do want access to the stack sheet here or everything else I have, I project out the entire slate, stat out every single player that's relevant for fantasy purposes. You can find the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. You get the optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheet, going over cash games, tournaments, all that fun stuff. You know where to find it. I think we found down below. But we'll go in order of salary, I guess, or maybe try to group this as teams if we can. But we have this Philly and Baltimore game, 50.5 point over under, which is the highest of the slate, 3-point spread. We're playing in Baltimore, and this is obviously a game with a lot of name value. On Philly, we have Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, who's been nothing short of incredible the previous few weeks, or really just all season long. A.J. Brown, we'll see if Devontae Smith plays. If not, that's a bump for A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, and that's basically it because every other wide receiver is useless in that offense. And then for Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, both kind of built similar, where they'll run the ball. They have mobile quarterbacks and two of the best running backs in the game. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Deontay Johnson is useless in this offense. I'm not sure why they traded for him. Maybe just as an extra depth piece in case something happens to Zay, or just keep him away from other offenses. And then we also have Mark Andrews, who's came on stronger as the season has progressed. Now, it's a 3-point spread, so it's tight. Both teams, decent implied team totals of 24.5 and 26.5. The only issue is that they're expensive. Like, if you want to stack the Eagles versus that awful Baltimore pass defense we've seen this year, Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown, I mean, $7,700, $8,300 for A.J. Brown. Meanwhile, if you want to just save your money and play Los Angeles, they have the exact same implied team total of 24.5, and they're $1,000 cheaper across the board on average. Justin Herbert's at $5,600. He only projects for 2 points less than Jalen Hurts, at least for me. And then Lat McConkey, wide receiver 1, or Quentin Johnston, who just can't catch a ball, $6,100 compared to $8,300. Now, I don't have Vlad projected as well as A.J. Brown, but honestly, it's not that far off. So that's just things to consider. Like, yes, they a lot of great name value here, but I think there's a better bang for your buck lower on in the salary ranges here. Then we have Cincinnati, which I don't have Pittsburgh on here. You could do a couple of pieces from Pittsburgh, like George Pickens as a run back option, or maybe Najee Harris if you wanted to, but that's not something I'm overly interested in. But I do like Cincy, and I don't think a lot of people besides Chase Brown are going to be too excited about the passing attack because we know Pittsburgh's defense isn't really that bad by any means. But a 25.5 implied team total here, only 2.5 point spread, 47.5 over under. I don't think we should ignore this game, especially since Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been absolutely world class this year. They have the best overall team projection this week for me, the best overall passing projection for quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. Chase Brown is going to be extremely chalky, which might keep keep some people away from the passing attack here. But Burrow's $7,000. That's still not anything insane. And then Jamar Chase is obviously pricey, $8,600. But if you make it a focal point, there's enough value on this slate to make that work. So do not ignore the Cincy passing attack with everyone going to Chase Brown this week. And then we have Atlanta and Los Angeles. So we'll kind of group these together, but this will be the chalkiest game of the week. At least I'd have to imagine. Right now, just so many good pieces, and they're not overly expensive, which is nice. Especially on FanDuel, too. You're getting a really nice price point on Atlanta and on Los Angeles. But Kirk Cousins would be the tournament pivot off of Justin Herbert if you wanted to go that route. But Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Herbert, McConkey, Gus Edwards, if you want to go absolute min price at running back, that's an option this week. McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Will Dissly. Options are endless here. It'll be a chalky game, but it does look pretty good. Now, Los Angeles is a team that is piquing my interest this week. They have one of the highest implied team totals at 26.5. This game only features a 2.5 point spread, 49.5 over under. And New Orleans is such an ugly team at this point in the season, but they still have decent pieces. Alvin Kamara, MVS, as a potential run back option in case he happens to catch a bomb or two, which he has done so far in recent weeks. And then we also have Taysom Hill, who's the most annoying person in DFS, but if you just want to bite the bullet, you can't play him over at tight end. But on the Los Angeles side of things, it's more condensed. We know where the ball is going. It's going to Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams. And I'm not scared of either defense here, so this is definitely the game that I'd look to stack up. Then we have Minnesota and Tampa Bay. Did not list Arizona, did not list Carolina for obvious reasons, but there is a couple of pieces from each team that I think are worthy of playing as a run back option in a full game stack for tournaments. Like Trey McBride, that's where the ball goes in that offense. Marvin Harrison is just kind of a shiny toy that they don't really use too much over there. And James Conner, but I guess McBride would probably be my preferred option. But for Minnesota, Sam Darnold's still cheap. He's still the best wide receiver in the game. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison had a huge game last week. TJ Hawkinson, all viable options here. And then for Tampa Bay, they're facing Carolina. I'm mostly interested in Bucky Irving here, but I think Bucky Irving will definitely pick up some steam. He did later in the week last week, ended up playing him and worked out. I was not expecting such a big performance from him, but I wasn't going to complain. But he'll be steamed up because of the performance last week, but he's still in a great spot versus Carolina. They're the worst on D in the league, and high implied team total. Really no reason not to like Bucky. But if you want to get off of that, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans stacks, maybe Kate Otten if you want to double that. That's certainly in play. And you can run it back with a cheap option in Carolina, whether that be David Moore, who should be chalky this week, Adam Thielen, or maybe even with Chuba Hubbard on the ground. All right, over to the build. As I always say, I got to do it. It's a disclaimer. Just the purpose of this is not for me to build you guys a lineup. Use your own favorite plays, and you can apply this similar process to your own to help you build some good lineups on Sundays. So for me, if I have a pocket passer, I'll typically take one of those, and then I'll grab a couple other pass catchers. And if I like the full game, I'll run a full game stack, but it's not always necessary. But lots of good quarterbacks this week. Personally, for me, I like spending down. Lots of good spend down options. Justin Herbert should be the chalk. I don't think Matthew Stafford is going to be unowned by any means, but we're building a single entry type lineup. So, I mean, it keeps you a little bit different going with Stafford over Herbert or maybe Anthony Richardson. Running back is a pretty condensed pool for me this week, which I like because I hate being super spread out. Just keying on a few guys. But if we were talking cash games, I'm assuming Chase Brown is going to be the number one option here. He just dominates this backfield ever since they launched Zach Moss. If we're looking at his snap counts in previous weeks, 80%, 87%, 83%, and they don't even really run the ball that well. It just dump it off to him in the flats or right in front of Joe Burrow in front of the offensive line, and that's just an extension of the run game basically, and that's awesome on a PPR scoring site like DraftKings, high implied team total. Like, yeah, Chase Brown makes sense to be the number one cash game option. I'm currently projecting him to be the highest owned running back, and actually the highest owned play on the slate currently, but it does make sense with his usage in that offense. And outside of that, I think Alvin Kamara probably comes in at number two. I know he's a little bit more expensive at $7,700, but he's still just like the man of that offense. He's going to get all the work basically. And he's averaging 23.2 opportunities per game with a 23% target share. Still no Chris Olave, obviously, and this game should be high scoring, close spread here. I mean, I don't see a reason not to like Alvin Kamara. I know he's kind of let down in a couple of chalk spots in recent weeks, but I mean, that literally means nothing. I mean, what happened in the past. He still gets all the usage, and maybe the touchdowns can come. I mean, Taysom Hill just absolutely took every single touchdown in that game last time out. They were on a bye last week, but man, that was absolutely brutal if you did not have Taysom Hill. But then after that, it's definitely a bit tight. I do think Bucky Irving is going to pick up some ownership this week. I mean, Carolina's just dead last in run defense this year, allowing 30.5 fantasy points per game, 130 rushing yards, really 1.5 rushing touchdowns. I mean, yeah, it's just a great spot. They're on the road. But one of the highest implied team totals on the slate, 5.5 point favorites. It is annoying that Rachaad White's still a thing. They do split the snaps. Bucky Irving is clearly the best back of that offense, 5.4 yards per carry. And what was really annoying, Bucky Irving got them down to the 1, and then they bring in Sean Tucker a couple of times last week. Like, what are we doing? But I don't watch the game. Maybe I was shaking up for a second, but either way, that was very, very annoying. So those are the two obvious ones I think for cash are going to be Kamara and Chase Brown, but it does get a little bit more dicey after that. But just kind of going from top to bottom here. Joe Mixon, he's in a great spot versus Jacksonville. Then I end up doing well versus Tennessee, which, I mean, they have a good run defense, but the game script didn't exactly go as planned. Tennessee was in that game more than I thought they would be, but he's averaging nearly 25 opportunities per game this year. Like, he is the man in this offense, and it's a great spot versus Jacksonville. I know we talked about how bad Carolina's run defense is, but Jacksonville is right up there with them, allowing 29.5 fantasy points per game, and they are second to worst in points allowed. So, I mean, this is a great bounce back spot for Mixon. I like him more on DraftKings than FanDuel because he's nearly $10,000 on FanDuel, and I feel like I can get some pretty similar production from guys like Chua Hubbard, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving for a lot more cheap. But yeah, Mixon's a fine DK play. Talked about Kamara. Bijan Robinson, I just like everybody in that game. And his floor is really safe with his usage in the passing game. Kyren Williams, he got into the end zone last week, which is nice. I know he's kind of been fading out in recent weeks, but it's just because the touchdowns haven't really been there, but the usage is still there. He's averaging 23 opportunities per game this season. And the only thing I will say is that since I have Matthew Stafford, I'm not going to play Kyren Williams because I just want the passing attack to go off. But in non-Matthew Stafford lineups, I guess Kyren Williams would make sense, and the price is getting pretty nice. Chuba Hubbard, he'd be fine as like a run back option and just a stack because he'll be using the passing game a bit too, but he's not my most favorite running back play in the world this weekend. Talked about Chase Brown, talked about Bucky Irving. No J.K. Dobbins this week, so Gus Edwards should be in line for the RB1 role now. There's going to be some other guys involved. You know, Hassan Haskins is in there, and I forget the other name, Kimmy or whatever it may be. So I wouldn't really expect any PPR upside from Gus Edwards much, but if he can just lunge into the end zone and get you 11 points, I guess it won't kill you at $4,300. Okay, back to the build here. Let's grab a couple of running backs. Since I am going with a Ram stack, I guess the preferred way to go running back would maybe just play Alvin Kamara to get that full-on game stack, which I do like for this game. So we'll play Kamara, and we'll try to save some money here. We do have Chase Brown down there at $6,200, but Bucky Irving's a little bit more cheap for the $100. I'm not going to go with the Tampa Bay passing attack here, so one exposure to that offense. So we'll go with Bucky here for the $800 because I know our two wide receivers, I mean, they're not like 9K, but they're still in the upper 7K range. So we'll try to save some money as we go through this now. Okay, back to the build here. Let's grab a couple of running backs. Since I am going with a Ram stack, I guess the preferred way to go running back would maybe just play Alvin Kamara to get that full-on game stack, which I do like for this game. So we'll play Kamara, and we'll try to save some money here. We do have Chase Brown down there at $6,200, but Bucky Irving's a little bit more cheap for the $100. I'm not going to go with the Tampa Bay passing attack here, so one exposure to that offense. So we'll go with Bucky here for the $800 because I know our two wide receivers, I mean, they're not like 9K, but they're still in the upper 7K range. So we'll try to save some money as we go through this now. And wide receivers pretty loaded. I mean, I don't talk about the individual matchups too much or really go over every single player because a lot of it's correlated to our quarterback. Like, yeah, Jamar Chase is awesome. A.J. Brown's awesome. So is Justin Jefferson. But if I'm playing Matthew Stafford's not going to run the ball. And if I'm playing my lineup to try to reach its full potential, I'm not going to try to hedge out of myself and play Matthew Stafford paired with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase instead of going straight to guys like Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Because if I'm playing Matthew Stafford, I need that 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown game performance to try to hit that ceiling. And if that's going to happen, it's going to happen because the ball went to most likely Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. Sure, it could go to Demarcus Robinson. It could go to somebody else, but I'm just saying most likely scenario would be those two. So that's who I would rock with for the specific build that we are looking at. Now, if we were talking cash games specifically, there's a couple of guys that are going to be standouts, and they are going to be in the mid-range here, like Ladd McConkey. At $6,100, he would be the first option for me, safest on the board. Good back-to-back games, kind of got there late. He started off pretty hot versus the Baltimore Ravens, and it took him like a whole half and got like a 4th down at the very end of the game to catch another ball. For some reason, just the targets were down, but he's the safest wide receiver in that offense, only $6,100. I think he makes a ton of sense. But really, just all these mid-range guys look really good. Brian Thomas with everybody out in Jacksonville. No Gabe Davis these days, no Christian Kirk. And we're getting Trevor Lawrence back, so that's a bit of a bump. The Brian Thomas at $5,500. And again, they should be trailing. Michael Pittman with no Josh Downs. Pittman was great last week. I think he just missed out on that 100-yard bonus. But with no downs, I mean, the ball is most likely going to Pittman, and New England's 25th versus wide receivers this season. Then also David Moore down low. He's somebody that I think is going to pick up quite a bit of ownership this week just because of the low price point. They should be trailing. Really good matchup versus Tampa Bay. They're 26 versus wide receivers, and we have seen David Moore get involved in this offense. So at that price point, if you were hunting for some value, I definitely think that makes some sense. But mid-range is loaded, but a lot of this is kind of just correlation with your quarterback. If I am playing Joe Burrow, how does Joe Burrow score his points? He does it through guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I like that price point. T. Higgins only $6,600, especially with a lot of the attention being on Jamar Chase. But other than that, like I said, it's kind of just correlation based if possible outside of those more cash game options. I think you can make a case for T. Higgins in cash games. You could make a case for guys like Calvin Ridley. Maybe not Darnell Mooney, but Drake London's another one that I think will be pretty popular. So Drake London, Lab McConkey, David Moore, Brian Thomas, Michael Pittman, pretty much the top of the board for cash games, and the rest would just kind of be like correlation to game stacks, quarterbacks, or whatever you're working with. And back to the build here. We're going to keep this simple. I already talked about it, but if I'm playing Matthew Stafford, I got to get pass catchers with him because he is not a mobile quarterback. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, come on down. You've made the list. And then we have tight end, never really an illustrious position to talk about, but we got to play them. And honestly, they're all kind of similar. Trey McBride's a target hog, 28% target share this year. Somehow has not found the end zone, but averaging 8 targets a game, 69 receiving yards. I played him last week in my Seattle Arizona stack. And don't get me started on that game. So much yardage in that one, so much potential for points, and they just could not score touchdowns. It was very, very annoying. I don't know what happened, but it was a tilting experience. I still got there in some of the lineups just because of the yardage, and I played Trey McBride in my tournament as a run back option for some Geno stacks, and that helped a bit. But man, it was really annoying. But he's very involved in this offense. We know that. If you are stacking Minnesota, he makes sense as a run back option, basically a receiver, $5,800. Evan Ingram, with everybody out, him and Brian Thomas will be the main benefactors there. Cade Otton, if you're playing Baker Mayfield. I know Mike Evans is back, which does hurt his overall upside, but he's still going to be involved in the offense. Theo Hawkinson, about the same. Dallas Goedert would get a bump with no Devontae Smith, but that's something to monitor. And then Will Dissly is probably the best cash game tight end ever since Hayden Hurst has been dead. He's been really nice, that offense, averaging about 5 targets per game, 18% target share, but he's been involved. Probably going to get you around 40 yards, chance to it for a touchdown. Good spot here and an easy stacking option with Justin Herbert. All right, let's finish this build off. We have 4 spots under $4,000, but we got some cheap plays to make this work. So if we want to just plug in cheap David Moore coming off a 10 target game, it's a good spot versus Tampa Bay. I'm not sure we can project for 10 targets again. I know I'm certainly not, but he's definitely one of the better point per dollar options on the board. Medium projection wise this week, and I think a lot of other places have it that way as well, so I would expect some decent ownership because he allows us to fit in Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Alvin Kamara in a lineup without doing any dire things at other positions. So now we have $4,000. We need a cheap defense. I mean, we probably could go mid-range if we wanted, but I like the first viable one, like Jaguars, at least they're at home facing Houston, but it doesn't feel that great, gonna lie. Patriots maybe versus Anthony Richardson, that could be an option at home. I honestly really don't. I don't put any thought in the defense, really. I just play whatever one fits. And, maybe they'll score a touchdown. Maybe they won't. I don't know. The Colts defense versus the Patriots on the road, I don't really know. Don't judge me on the defense. Let's just throw in the Patriots for fun right now. I mean, who cares? Just fix it later if you want. So we have around $5,000 if we go that route. And we don't have any charger. And I would like to get a charger here. So Will Dissly, we'll just plug in there. And that gives us $5,700 for the last spot at flex, which I'm pretty sure there's a couple wide receivers, maybe a running back we could get to. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, I like that spot versus Washington. Darnell Mooney, Brian Thomas, that's actually just a really good range. I forget. Yeah, Michael Pittman's only $5,200. Jordan Addison, it's a pretty good list. I think the overall makeup of this lineup looks good. We have Matthew Stafford double stacked with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Alvin Kamara is the run back option for the full game stack. If you wanted to go full game stack, you could throw in MVS if you wanted over David Moore and move a couple of things around. Then we have Bucky Irving, Will Dissly. Defense, it doesn't matter. Just plug one in and the flex is up for your imagination. Okay, as per usual, we're going to run the optimizer here. Just a quick 20 max to see which players pop up the most. Now it is Friday, so certainly things can change. Looks like our settings say from last time. Take the tight end out of the flex. Ram this at 10%. We took out the ownership projections just so I don't do everything on here. We'll do some quick stack settings. Obviously, I would take more time if I was actually doing this, but just a quick run through. Raw dog the optimizer here just for some quick settings, and we could specify, but let's not. All right, so we're in a quick 20 max here, and I'll see you in a second. And we got to run, and I am seeing a lot of Justin Herbert, at least on the eyes early on. I haven't scrolled down, but honestly, we might have it's almost 100% Justin Herbert. Obviously, if you're doing a 20 max, you want to mess around with your exposures and whatnot. But yeah, tons of Chase Brown, tons of Justin Herbert. Jets defense coming in a lot. They're only $2,500. I think they're playing Seattle. Could be an option, I guess. Alvin Kamara, Brian Thomas, Lamakonki, Pittman. Like, yeah, this is basically the cash game pool right here. Obviously, there's some other guys that we can get to, but as well. But yeah, those are the guys I would have expected, at least from a medium projection standpoint, even with a little bit of randomness mixed in. Teams: the Chargers, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, New Orleans, Rams. They're getting pumped in. I do want to look at some of these Justin Herbert lineups, make sure we follow the rules. And we have McConkey down there and Will Dissly, so it is double stack. We did not specify if we want a run back option or not. It does not look like one got forced in. I do want to check out a Matthew Stafford build really quick, and we got one down here. I don't think you guys can see at the very bottom, but looks like just a single stack with Puka Nacua. The next one did one with Cooper Kupp. Now, I did throw in Kyron Williams, which I don't think it's a horrible thing to have him in the same lineup, but I probably wouldn't do that in a single entry, maybe in MME, which I guess this is what it is. That's fine, but you could always set up a rule to kind of avoid that situation if you wanted to. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for brand new. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'm more than happy to answer them. Hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving, and I'll see you all next time.